I'm not surprised that there are people struggling to see the difference between gray and blue because I can't see the difference between blue eyes and gray eyes. I haven't read Hunger Games since middle school, but I'm pretty sure Katniss Everdeen was the character that introduced me to the concept of gray eyes. And when I read it, I was like, I don't know what that is. How does that look? And when I found out, I was like, aren't those just blue eyes? And here's the thing, I'm not white, so it's not up to me to understand how y'all categorize yourselves, but I often feel gaslit. Because another thing that I'm confused about is the concept of a dirty blonde. I know that when you were born, you were a blonde, but now your hair is brown. Why are you not a brunette? It feels like one of those situations where someone will go,
why do you have an opinion?
Well, I have eyes. I can see it. But the thing is that perception and the information that we input through our eyes isn't everything. Your eyes can lie to you. The information that you obtain by looking can often be false, right? Especially since color perception is socialized. When we're in elementary school, they teach us that the primary colors is red, yellow, and blue. However, that's not true. The primary colors are cyan, magenta, and yellow. We only got one accurate. This also reminds me of the myth that the colors that they used to describe Snow White is based off of the first colors humans named, right? But when I thought about it, because the thing is that I have random information just floating in my head, I have a lot of space for it, but often I never double check. The myth goes that her skin was white as snow, her lips were red as blood, and her hair was dark as ebony. But when I thought about it, I was like, no, well, humans have always been able to perceive green. Green is a major color for humanity, right? So I actually went out of my way to try to find the origin of this random fact that I have floating in my hair. So the first place I went was John Solo because I used to watch his videos for the messed up histories of different fables and myths. I didn't find it there. What I did do was get lucky and find a PBS sponsored YouTube channel called Other Words that is hosted by a sociolinguistic who talks about the way that we perceive language. And she said that in human language, if there are only two colors that we've named, it's gonna be white and black. If there's three colors, it's gonna be white, black, and red. Remember you're the one. I watched the rest of the video and it went on to explain that the reason why red is first is because we have been programmed, or at least our environment has programmed us, that we need to actually see warm colored stuff before we see cool colored stuff. And I'm gonna link it down below so you can watch it as well. But at the end of the day, that's why I think someone like me from an African background, a black background, who doesn't really interact with a lot of white people outside of school, right? It would make sense that even the concept of like light or pale colored eyes, that every time you explain, well, my eyes are like this, my eyes are like this, I'm just hearing a bunch of meh, right? Like I don't interact with that. I don't interact with those phenotypes or those features enough for me to actually truly be able to distinguish, because that's not part of my environment. Besides the sky and possibly the water, my environment, I mean, maybe even the clothes that I wear, but I don't have a lot of, actually, now that I think about it, I don't have a lot of blue clothes. I don't gravitate towards blue. I'm a very warm-centric person. Also, because I'm saying that color is socialized, apparently women perceive more color than men. Not in the sense that the male eye can't actually see as many colors as us, even though there is a widely agreed upon belief that colorblindness is inherently a male trait, right? Like you inherit that as a male, because colorblindness is a hereditary trait and it does happen most to men, right? Though they are more likely to be colorblind, right? I mean in the sense that because they are not socialized to experiment and explore with color as little boys, they have a hard time actually differentiating between distinct color variations. What I will say is that I've been unpacking a lot of things about like how, you know, race, gender, religion even are social constructs, so they're only real because we agree upon them. Like we as a collective agree that they're real, right? And I've come to the conclusion that I think most of the major differences between like male and female are socialized. Like we agreed upon this to be the differences, and they're actually not in our genetic code. And I even that's the thing, I came into doing the research thinking, well, no, like colorblindness is a male trait, like it's in their DNA or whatever, only to be realized that, hey, you know that girls are often socialized to be agreeable. Girls are socialized to mask. Girls are socialized to not be contrarians, right? And boys are socialized that they can't be contrarians, but like within the confines of what it means to be a boy or a man. But they're allowed to voice complaints more than girls, right? I'm starting to think that there are probably more girls walking around with colorblindness, but because they realize, hey, I'm trying to fit in with everybody.
You say that's the color, then I'm gonna say that color, but low-key, I don't see it that way, and I'm actually struggling to voice that I'm not perceiving it the way that y'all are perceiving it.
Girls are socialized to mask. So even colorblindness might not be a gender thing. And that's just so wild. Like that is a possibility. And because of because of Couch Lady, I think that's another thing that I'm just like, it's another gender myth. But even outside of like gender, right? Because I did bring up religion and race or blah, blah, blah. And I guess religion could be a good topic for color as well, but not for this video. I did talk about race and how even my African parents, they will look at something turquoise and they will call it green before they call it blue. And that always throws me off. It actually it does something to my brain. It's almost visceral. I'm just like, well, first of all, it's not a true blue, so you shouldn't be calling it blue. But if you were to out of the main 6 colors that they teach us, if you were to call it a color, call it blue. But it's not blue and it's not green, so you call it turquoise. Turquoise is such a distinct color to me that you can't call it anything but turquoise. You might be able to get away with it by calling it teal. And in fact, that video from Otherword, right? They said, oh, look at all the different greens. And then they proceeded to say teal was a type of green. And I went, huh? I guess teal gets to call itself green, but turquoise can't call itself green. It's a type of blue, but it's also not blue. But again, it's like socialized, right? And I would even say even there are some times where something is leaning in between red and orange, right? And they'll call it red. And I think that's totally fine. This one doesn't trigger me as much, but in my mind, I'm just like, red is one of those colors where it's there's only a true pure version of that color. So if it's not a true pure version of the color, don't call it that color. So if it's leaning towards red, if it's leaning into orange, you need to call it orange, but a reddish orange. But it's not a true red, so you can't be comfortable just calling it red. In my opinion, right? And that's just me, what I was socialized in America, right? But there have been times where the way that they are perceiving color, I'm just like, no. And even an example outside of my own family is that apparently Inuit people up north, Alaska and part of Canada, they can distinguish between different white colors because part of their environment is just different layers of snow, different cooler colors and everything. And that helps them interact with their environment differently than me. I'm not going to be capable of doing that. I might be able to learn, but I would struggle immensely. So even that, color is definitely socialized, right? I say this as hey, race. I did say race, but it's also an ethnicity and it's also nationality. I'm not, my parents grew up in Africa, right? My parents grew up in Kenya. I grew up in America. That's a nationality difference. Ethnically, I'm the same thing, and racially, I'm the same thing. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of it's also age, because that's the thing. I'm in a millennial gray house because someone tried to renovate this house from the 80s, and I low-key hate it. So it's also age, because people baby boomers in the 70s weren't painting their house gray. Ooh, there was one person who actually clocked me in the comments, and I haven't read the new comments yet, but I am going to work on this and then upload it. I hate FD Signifier. I low-key think that he's stealing my scripts. He's in my brain. He's in my brain, or I'm in his brain, or something like that, right? He said that TikTok really works because it's inflammatory content. If I were to refilm my TikTok, I would not say, hey, I'm not surprised that white people. I would have just said, I'm not surprised that people, because someone was just like, wait, so you're saying that white people are struggling to see the difference between gray and blue, but then you proceed as a person of color to say that you're struggling between gray eyes and blue eyes. Yes, you know what, you got me, because I did also realize it. People who live in PWIs, assimilation is your existence. To some extent, you've assimilated. To some extent, you have conformed. And what color matches the concept of conformity the best? Gray.
I don't think I really actually clarified what I was trying to say. What I'm saying is just because white people have a culture, they have a culture of assimilation and conformity. We have the millennial gray homes, we have the beige mom, and then all the special McDonald's now just look generic and boring. You know what I mean? There has been a level of assimilation and grayness and conformity that white people, or at least PWIs or suburbia, has been going through, that I wouldn't be surprised that there's a level of confusion in your environment, right? And as a Black person who also did grow up in PWIs and whatnot, I can relate to that concept, right? Because I am having a hard time perceiving, because I've never been placed in an environment where I can see different blue eyes or different light eyes. So being able to differentiate between gray and blue, it's it's pretty much, it's still an argument about that your environment informs the way you perceive color. And also, I didn't mention animals and how we perceive animal colors, but like sometimes I read, like I get puppy content, right? And they're just like, oh yeah, this is a blue terrier, and then they'll show the dog and it's gray, and I'm looking at it, I'm just like, well yeah, blue and gray, blah blah, but like, no, I am being gaslit. I know I'm being gaslit, but like it's just like, it's like, yeah, whatever reason, if a dog is gray, we're gonna call it blue, and everyone has just decided to agree upon that. And it's not specifically a white thing, but we live in a white-centric world, so I'm going to blame them every time. I'm just like, this is wacky. I don't think in a world that would have been black-centric, we would be calling dogs that are gray blue. You know what I mean? That definitely just seems...
They paint their house gray and then pops of white and then pops of black, and then they proceed to put, maybe if they want to put a color, blue.
Where's the flavor?
I don't like it. Gender, race, nationality, age, because it's called millennial gray. These are all factors that go into how we perceive color, and that's just so interesting. And it's not one of those things where it's just like, oh yeah, you can just never trust your eyes, but it's just like, hey, like all we have is the collective. Like to some extent, I understand that some people want things to be true and pure and want things to be concrete, right? But even concrete withers and cracks and it erodes, right? So life is just fluid, and we roll with the punches, and we perceive life the way that we can perceive life. And we all try to come to an agreement. Because I live in a black body, I know that historically white people have come into our spaces, right? And have imposed their perception onto us. And they are not accurate perceptions. They are not in community with us. They do not see the world like us, just because we lived in different worlds, right? And for that reason, I don't actually feel comfortable saying that I think people with gray eyes have blue eyes. And I did see some comments where someone was just like, hey, no, I have gray eyes, and I'm like, you can't tell me otherwise. The thing is that if you say your eyes are gray, then they're gray. If you say your hair is blonde, then they're blonde. Especially since at the end of the day, like dirty blonde people, like they have a recessive gene. That's why they were born blonde. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not even trying to argue with you. I'm just saying that it's like, it's one of those things where I just don't perceive it that way, but it's okay because y'all understand that. I would even say like, whatever hair color you're telling me, right? Like if you say your eyes are gray, then they're gray. If you say they're blue, right? If you say they're green, hazel, right? If you say that you're blonde, you're blonde. If you say you're a brunette, you're a brunette. And another one is that I've had people say, yeah, I'm a strawberry blonde, and I don't see the strawberry. But I'm just assuming that other people, like people who really do understand the different blonde types, can see that you are a strawberry blonde. But it's like, it can't be me. I'm going to struggle, and I'm going to struggle through it, but I'm going to do it right eventually. So the truth is that I've actually yet to actually meet a real person with gray eyes. So until I'm able to like see their eyes, really actually get to look at it and go, oh, okay, no, like, cause I know there is a difference. And in fact, I found another source, and it's pretty credible. They're not an eye doctor, which I found out. Optometrist is like the concept of a psychologist and a psychiatrist. A psychologist is not a medical doctor, right? But they are well trained and they are credible, right? That's what an optometrist is. And then the actual like medical version of an optometrist, right? Like someone who is an actual like physician doctor is called an ophthalmologist. But still an optometrist would be credible. But the source that I have is not either one. They are a general surgeon. And that's the thing, like, understand, like, he's a general surgeon, so he probably does mostly abdomen or like abdominal stuff, like your stomach, right? Or like maybe like takes off maybe a cancer cell on your skin, some like small surgeries, nothing like too like critical, I will say, not to like discredit him or anything. And his name is Dr. Caron, and I found a Reddit discussing him, but I don't know how credible, I don't know how Reddit works, right? But they're saying, hey, they like him compared to some other doctors. So like, I do think that he's relatively credible, but like all doctors have a general information amongst doctors, because there's general information about the body, and then there's doctors' general information. So he didn't specialize in eyes, but amongst doctors, he has the same general information, right? He proceeded to actually explain what the difference between gray eyes and blue eyes are.
People who have grey eyes have the craziest physics going on in there. It's the same reason the sky and clouds are grey on a rainy day. Similar to those with blue eyes, the grey-eyed folk have little to no melanin pigment in the stroma of the iris. The difference between grey and blue eyes is that grey eyes have more collagen deposits in the stroma. This means there's a more even scattering of all the wavelengths of light that's not frequency dependent.
So there is a difference. I'm just saying that I have a hard time seeing the, like I can see the difference, but like also if like someone with gray eyes was to say, yeah, my eyes are blue, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm just gonna let you tell me what you have, and I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna agree, because again, like, you know, it's a social construct to some extent. So like, whatever we come to the same agreement about. Oh, that was another part of it. Camera. Like the lady with the couch, that when she was like, what color is this couch? I was like, well, you should never trust your camera to actually be able to replicate exactly what you're seeing. I need to see a person with gray eyes in person. And it probably, no, not to be derogatory or weird, but I think in general, like, you know, like the blue eye meme, because their eyes are so striking, I think it would be like a bit jarring to make eye contact, and especially since eye contact is very intimate for me. Like, I don't like making eye contact if I'm not ready, but like, I would actually genuinely like to be able to process the concept of gray eyes and truly perceive and be respectful of the difference. I think that's everything. I have more things to talk about color. Like, I didn't get to talk about red. Red is such, like, I understand why red is the first color that we, like, because, like, I mean, there's always an argument between if white or black is a real color. I don't care. I see it, so I'm gonna call it color. And anytime someone's just like, no, black is the absence of color. Shut up. Like, I have one other video technically on my account. It's a live. And that was where I also have said that I don't get off on doing rage bait. I think I accidentally did rage bait. Again, the first time I did rage bait, I tried to go on live and explain myself, right? And then I just ended up deleting the TikTok because I was just like, y'all just don't get it the way I do. But this one, I think I am being respectful. Also because I know I'm not right. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.